Virginia, and a member opposed. Each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is a fairly simple amendment, and it's a common sense amendment. While the technologies could also be used that this amendment will plus up for natural gas or oil, I will focus my attention on coal because that's what happens in my district predominantly. Over the last several years, as many of us know, there have been numerous burdensome regulations on the coal industry and industries that burn coal. The very least we can do is to make sure that coal-fired power plants and others dependent on coal, among those most heavily targeted, have the technologies necessary to meet the standards being imposed on them. In recent months, I've had many conversations and discussions with a number of folks, both in Southwest Virginia, but also folks at the Department of Energy, about ways that we can better do the research necessary to make clean coal technology available. One thing is very clear. There is a future for coal, and it lies in many ways in the technologies being researched and supported by the Department of Energy's Office of Fossil Energy Research. We'd love to get parity. This amendment doesn't bring us to parity, but it gets us a little bit closer. My amendment would simply add $45 million for fossil energy research and development from the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy account for the purpose of aiding the development of clean coal technology. Now, just so you understand, the research money for energy efficiency and renewable energy would still be at $1.775 billion, and the research money for fossil fuels, including coal, would only get plussed up to $690. So you still have a greater amount of money, by almost a little bit more than 2 to 1, going to other energies besides the fossil fuels. Some of the key power providers in Virginia have made it clear that coal will continue to be a part of their strategy for a long time to come. Dominion, at a recent conference that we had, Dominion Power indicated that by 2030 they expect they'll still be using about 30% of their energy production will be from coal. American Electric Power indicated that about half of theirs in 2030 would still be from coal. Now, what we have to do is we have to make sure that we get our technologies in line to make sure that we can continue to burn coal, but burn it in a cleaner fashion. And while there are various clean coal technologies currently in development, they will not be ready for commercial use for years to come unless we change the timeline. So my amendment would change that timeline. It'll shorten that time by putting more money into research for clean coal technology. So we have two intersecting interests here. Let's figure out a way we can keep the jobs, particularly in Southwest Virginia and Central Appalachia, and also burn coal more cleanly. My amendment gives us a ray of hope, a step forward to keeping those high-paying coal jobs, or at least some of them. Lost thousands in the last few years, but keeping those jobs while also finding ways to burn the coal more cleanly. This amendment will support both of these goals by ensuring additional funding for clean coal research. That research can also be used in natural gas. My favorite is chemical looping. This is a reasonable approach, and I hope that the body will adopt this amendment. I appreciate that the underlying bill does provide a slight increase in fossil fuel energy research over last year's level, but when you're losing as many jobs as my district has, you have to fight for everything you can get. And I reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlelady rise?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I rise to claim time in opposition.
The gentlelady is recognized. 5 minutes.
Yes, I appreciate Congressman Griffith's efforts here, but unfortunately rise in opposition to the amendment. Let me just say that in the base bill that we have worked very hard on, there's $645 million in the account for fossil energy, and that's about $13 million more over the current fiscal year. In addition, it's $285 million above the budget request. So I think if you put it in that frame, we've done quite well with difficult choices inside our bill. The energy efficiency and renewable energy account is already $248 million below this year and more than $1 billion below the budget request. So I would say to the gentleman, I don't think that the offset you provided is a very good one. We know that renewable energy is at the forefront of an energy transformation that is already across our country, and we do need a more balanced approach to energy. And while I do support fossil energy research and development and, frankly, transition for communities that have been harmed by the transformation in the energy sector, coal communities and coal shipping communities across this country, I really can't support this level of disproportionate funding. So I strongly oppose the amendment and do not agree with his offset, and I would urge my colleagues to join me in a no vote.
Gentlelady yield back.
I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, may I inquire as to how much time I have remaining?
The gentleman has 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the gentlelady's comments and recognize that they did plus it up a little bit, but when you look at the folks that I represent and the thousands of folks who have lost their jobs in the mining industry, we have got to do more. We have got to do more. And everybody likes to talk about we're going to help, we're going to transition, but some of my counties, quite frankly, what are you going to transition them to? No great roads. We should work on that as well. And frankly, we've got trees and mountains. Recently, one of my counties had to go build a new high school because all their high schools were in the floodway. We had 2 pieces of land that were flat enough to build the high school on in the entire county. So when people say transition, I always say, what are you going to do when you don't have the land to build factories and you don't have the resources to do something else? They've always done mining. They can continue to do mining. Let's meet the compromise here. Put research money in so they can continue to mine, continue to have jobs, and we can have a cleaner burning fuel, but still use our coal. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentlelady is recognized.
Yes, might I inquire how much time I have remaining?
Gentlelady has 3 minutes.
I have 3 minutes remaining. No, I couldn't agree with Congressman Griffith more about the necessity of transitioning communities. When I look back to the 1990s when something called NAFTA passed, the North American Free Trade Agreement, we were promised that there would be a North American Development Bank and that any community that was harmed in the South or the North would be helped. The federal government never kept its word. Never kept its word. And go try to find that North American Development Bank today. And we look at hollowed-out communities across this country. If we look at the coal communities, and Ohio has a lot of coal, we actually have more BTUs under the ground between Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all the way into Illinois than the Middle East has oil. It's just a little bit harder. And so we look at these communities that have been so devastated, and the federal government, you know, kind of sat on the side. And yes, we had the Appalachian Regional Commission, terribly underfunded, without the kind of bonding and development authority that should exist. I look at the steel communities that I represent. People in my district are getting pink slips every day at our big steel companies because of imported steel. And the federal government sits with on its hands here at the federal level in the International Trade Commission and the National Economic Office over at the National Security Council. It upsets me a great deal that we haven't been able to help communities so impacted. I hope that for those communities that are suffering because of the transition in, you know, the energy sector, partly due to the discovery of natural gas, quite frankly, in places like Ohio, and I'm not sure about Virginia, we really need the type of transition program that we should have had back in the 90s for the NAFTA communities and that we should have had for the steel communities, and the federal government is just too far away from the places where we live to even see it sometimes. So I share the gentleman's passion on that, but I really don't think that we should take from the accounts that are providing some of the future answers. I hope that regions like yours could move into the new energy economy as well. Up in the Lake Erie area where I live, we're trying very, very hard to capture the wind. And Lake Erie is the Saudi Arabia of wind. It's part of our new future, part of a new grid. We hope to be very successful there. I would hope that some of these new technologies could also burgeon in regions of Virginia. There's no reason that they can't. And so I believe the Department of Energy, the Department of Labor, all our Department of Commerce have an obligation to the communities that have been harmed because of policies that happen in the private sector or the public sector. But we haven't been so good at that as a federal government. So I reluctantly oppose the gentleman's amendment, but understand his motivation, and I yield back my